Hello again, it's John Uldrick here, and this is kind of my case study overview. I serve First Baptist Church of Greenwood, South Carolina, as their senior pastor. Today is Sunday, May the 18th. Yes, I'm uploading this just prior to its deadline because life in my part of the world has been crazy. And on June the 1st, I will celebrate my first anniversary as senior pastor here. What you don't know about First Baptist Greenwood or Greenwood, South Carolina itself, is I am literally 30 miles from my hometown. I grew up, I was actually born in Greenwood and 50 years ago, and grew up in a similar church in Clinton, and knew about this congregation. I've known about this congregation for a long time, really. I've known about its forward thinking. Progressive is probably not an exact description, but Greenwood is in the Lakelands portion of South Carolina. We are about an hour south of Greenville, about an hour and 10 minutes northwest of Augusta. We are an hour east of Elberton, Georgia, and we're an hour west of Columbia, South Carolina. And so we are kind of the hub. Greenwood County is kind of the hub of a 7-county region where our population, the county, is probably 70,000, 75,000 maybe. And our city is probably close to 25, 27,000. So we're not super small, but we are a rural context, what I would call a rural South Carolina context. Having lived in Florida and Georgia for the last 24, 23 years total, I've been out of South Carolina, lived out of South Carolina more than I've lived in. And this congregation has had theological shifts over its time. I can remember as a college student in Clinton, where I grew up, and having a former staff member of First Baptist Church, Clinton, who dared to talk about the flood story as allegory and was run out of that congregation. And he actually began serving this congregation following his exit from First Baptist Church in Clinton. First Baptist Greenwood was founded in the late 1800s and has been kind of a part of a progressive identity in some ways for a long time. It has had multiple pastorates, but over the last 50, probably 80 years, there have only been 3. And so the man I'm following was here for 20. He followed someone here for 30 plus. And then his predecessor built the sanctuary and is known for most of the big shifts and booming years of First Baptist in Greenwood. The town is diverse, but it has a long history of racial divide, of social and financial inequity along race lines. And I have members in their early 60s that still remember the schools integrating. A long-standing member who died earlier this past year, Jack Parham, was known, he's an OB-GYN, and he was known for integrating the hospital system. So this town and its racial inequity is in its infancy of learning how to be a diverse and safe place for all races. The church has always been a leader in service and in really theological thought. It's ordained women since the 70s. In fact, one of the reasons it was kicked out of the local association, as well as the South Carolina Baptist Convention, was Strom Thurmond's sister. And if you don't know who Strom Thurmond is, he was a senator in South Carolina for 1,000 years. He's from Edgefield County, which is it's a neighboring county not far from here. And Strom Thurmond's sister was actually ordained as the first female deacon in the early 70s. They also decided to take all forms of baptism. You didn't have to be rebaptized to become a member of First Baptist Church back then, and that was before its time. I'm in a context a year in, realizing I knew coming in that I was serving a politically diverse church, purple, if you want to call it that way, both reds and blues all over the map in our congregation, in a pretty conservative state, in a pretty conservative area of the country, and in even the county, the area of the state. But we've got folks in our congregation who are openly gay. This congregation ordained an openly gay deacon 6 years ago. There were families who left, but those who are here are still here. I knew that coming in, and one of the things that we're dealing with right now is we are far from welcoming and affirming, open and affirming, a welcoming church. But we are the only Baptist space in the area who probably has a chance at being a space like that. And currently serving alongside me is a very musically talented man who is openly gay and whose husband passed away during the pandemic. He's a Furman grad, a beautiful voice, and classically trained, and was actually sang for the Met and on Broadway, and as a tenor. And during COVID, it kind of paused his career. He is currently the director of music ministry here at First Baptist part-time. He's got some other roles as well. And Keith is seeking ordination. He and I have talked about that. And so, we are in a church who is divided, not racially. We're as white as it gets in this area. We have zero diversity racially, but are split along party lines and theologically as well, very diverse. It's interesting, we have trained folks as well. We've got seminary trained, a lot of former pastors. Connie Maxwell's the pastor and leader of that Boys and Girls organization. It's a orphanage, really. Our members here, several former staff members here. And so, and then Lander University is also in town, and it's one of the educational spaces where we've got professors of English, former professors of music, highly educated people, doctors and lawyers fill our pews, educators fill our pews, and blue-collar folks fill our pews, but not as many blue-collar folks as other professions. And so in 2025, as divided as our country is, and as much as folks are struggling over identity issues and our own church's identity, I held a congregational conversation this morning, and we left with some jobs to do related to facility and mission and ministry and programming and outreach. But I had one lady say, John, we've got to figure out who we are first. Man, isn't that the question a lot of churches are struggling over? And it's at the heart of my case study and what I'll be presenting to you all. But we are really a Baptist oasis in a town with a ton of Baptist churches, none of which will ordain women, but who finds herself stuck in the midst of a culture war. Where no one listens to anyone else, where all we see are people who see those who live differently or are different as threats. And I find myself pastoring in the midst of people like that and in a congregation who is very diverse and trying to lead them toward deep conversation and not uniformity, but unity in the ways in which we gather week in and week out. So, again, my context is probably not super unique. I've got friends in churches a lot like this, just not in this town, and they're all struggling over the ways in which we're torn apart these days. So I look forward to sharing more about my case study when we're together.